Welcome back to another furniture flip. Today we're working on this wooden chest of drawers that I got from the thrift store for just $35. This thing is entirely solid pine wood, which is super awesome. It means we have tons of possibilities for staining, painting. The downside though is that this piece doesn't have a ton of character to it, aside from these super cute crystal handles. So we're gonna have to do some extra work on the design end, but don't worry, I already have some inspiration. Something like this piece that I found on Pinterest. I'm super excited to see where this goes. This is our first piece in the new shop, so let's get right into it. Okay, I have a bucket here of hot water with a bit of powdered Tide, and we're gonna use this to clean every single surface of any dust, sticky stuff, or leftover gunk from the previous owner. This is really important to do even if you're gonna be sanding an entire piece, because you don't want any of that pushed into the grain of the wood. So I am noticing that this is a bit unstable. I'm trying to figure out where exactly that's coming from. This whole thing looks like it's built with nails instead of screws. So it could be that just a few pieces are loose. It's also a bit wiggly, which just has to do with the feet. I can see there are some metal feet on the bottom here and maybe one is missing. So we'll tip this over in a second and check it out. And what do you know, we are missing just 1 foot right here. So that's a really easy fix. Okay, just a few last things I'm noticing. First of all, these drawer slides are all in really good condition. This slides directly on the frame on this side, and I can feel that they're not being worn down over time, but there's also still a bit of a layer of wax on here, which is great. We'll add more at the end. I also am seeing a few dings in the wood here, even some cracked pieces along this, some of the drawer fronts. We can definitely fix that. I think there's one in here that has a cracked bottom plate, but we should be able to glue that back together. And otherwise, it looks like we are in pretty good shape. This structural repair stuff is always one of the most tedious parts of furniture repair, but solving these things right up front gets it out of the way and gives you a much better piece in the end. So I'm gonna grab some clean water and wipe this all down, and then we can move on to making those repairs. All right, it is the next day. All this wood filler has dried. We've also repaired the structural components here at the bottom, so this is feeling a lot more sturdy, which means that it's time to move on to sanding, both to buff back some of this wood filler so it's nice and flush, as well as to get down into this wood grain so we can prepare it for staining. So my plan is just to scuff sand the body in most parts where I want to paint. And then this top part, as well as some of the drawers, I'm gonna take all the way down to plain wood so we can stain it. So let's roll this outside and get started. Okay, that took longer than expected. Sanding always does, so the key thing is to be patient. I think in the future, if I did that again, I would have used either a chemical stripper on the top here to get that top coat off, or I would have used a carbide scraper, which is a tool I've seen used before and I really want to try. But anyways, here we are. Normally I use my air compressor with a little gun to spray off all the sand outside, but we're not quite set up in the shop to do that just yet. So I'm gonna wipe these down just with a cloth and some water, and then we will get to staining and painting. I am using Behr chalk paint for the first time, and I'm actually really excited. This is something I've seen in store at Home Depot, and it's really nice that you can pick it up the same day. And even better, you can actually tint it to any color under the sun. So today I'm using a nice dark green color, and I'm gonna paint the frame at full opacity. I mean, so far it feels mostly like chalk paint. It does go on pretty thick, but as you spread it out, like I am seeing some of the wood through here, which I'm gonna do 2 coats regardless, but we'll see how that dries down. Yeah, so far so good. So I'm using my triangle zebra brush here, which I like it for this kind of application because you can get into the detailed flatter spots. You can also push it into some of these grooves here with the tip, but it is big enough to carry a good amount of paint on it compared to some of the smaller detail brushes. So it's like a good multi-purpose tool, especially when you have flat corners and there's not really a bunch of rounds that you're doing. Then it's better to use a round brush. All right, we are all done with the base here. So I did do 2 coats, and I don't really have any complaints about this paint. Aside from the fact that it's a bit thick, I love it. It's also only $24 a quart, which is what I paid at Home Depot. And that's one of the benefits of a massive paint company like Behr. You know, they have that mass production efficiency that a smaller company doesn't have. So definitely like that perk. I love this color that I picked out. It's called North Woods. So while this is drying, I'm gonna have to do some just touch-up sanding here on some of this overpainting, but we'll get to staining this in a second. Right now, I wanna move on to the lower drawers, and we're gonna put this paint to test doing a paint wash. So I'm gonna mix up some paint half and half with water, and we're gonna see how that looks on these drawer fronts. Okay, not entirely the look I was going for, but you can see how the green has also neutralized a lot of the red, which is going to be helpful. So I'm going to let this dry, and I do want to try to just do like a second or third coat on top of it. I feel like this is like 25% of where I want it to be in terms of covering, but it did cover, so yeah, we're just experimenting here and we'll see what happens. I'm also gonna see what happens if I let it dry for a little while longer before I wipe it up. All right, moment of truth before it dries out way too much. Let's see. Nice, okay, that's definitely more of the look that I was going for. Still a bit inconsistent through here, but we can touch that up. Okay, they were definitely all drying at different speeds, kind of hard to manage. Some are lighter, some are darker. I think what I actually like best is almost this one at the end. You can see both the wood really well, as well as a dark, rich green stain. So I'm gonna just keep playing around, putting a bit more on. This also, by the way, is one of the funnest parts of old furniture because nothing really has to look perfect. It's almost more authentic and definitely easier when you lean into that kind of like rough texture, rustic, distressed look. I'm gonna use a stain color that I love called Early American, which is kind of a medium warm brown tone. All right, we are getting really close to being done. I'm gonna let this sit for about 4 hours to make sure both the stain and the paint is nice and dry, and I will see you back when we start to do some distressing, top coats, and final touches. Okay, so I ended up doing 2 coats on everything just because it's so easy to do and so quick, and once your cloth is saturated there, like it just takes no time at all to keep going. So the drawers that we painted do feel pretty good because they had that layer of paint on top of them already. But this wood surface, what happens sometimes with the poly is that it raises the grain a little bit. So we have 2 coats on it now. It is quite well protected, but it still feels a little rough. It's not really like that nice hard lacquered feel. So I'm gonna do another sanding layer, and I'll probably do, you know, several coats over the next day or so, just to get this to a really hard, durable finish. But before I do that, because it does take several hours between coats, I'm gonna tip this over and work on the feet. I couldn't find a replacement for the feet that were already on this dresser, so I actually opted to pop those all off and replace them entirely with these little soft pads. These just tap in with a hammer super easily, and they help prevent any scuffs on floors, which is great. Because these drawers do slide all the way out, I'm going to install some drawer stops as well. These are little plastic tabs that you can attach to the back of the dresser or wherever there's going to be some interference with the frame. And they can just pop in with that curve, and then the counter curve prevents them from coming out unless you press the tab down, if that makes sense. We are ready for some hardware. Here are the ones that came in here on my left. I picked these up on Amazon. You can find the link down below. And I really loved the antique look that they have. They're that nice brushed nickel look that really matches the original handles here. So I wasn't planning on this, but now that I see them together, I actually think I want to use these leftovers that I have. I only have 3 of them, which is literally perfect. I think I'm going to put these crystals on the top 3 drawers and then put these new ones down on the bottom, just to give that top row some extra pizzazz and emphasis. So let's get to that, and then we are ready for the final reveal. That is a wrap on this project. It's definitely a different style than I normally do, but I loved experimenting on the different finishes, on the different drawers. I love the mismatched handles look, and it kind of came out vintage charming, which I love. As for this Behr chalk paint, I actually really like it, and I'm gonna consider using it again. It's a great price point. It feels and works just like regular chalk paint that I'm used to, and the added benefit of being able to customize your color is really appealing to me. It's definitely better than the Rust-Oleum milk paint you can also buy at big box stores, which I used in this project up above. You can find everything I used today down below, and while you're there, leave me a comment about what I could do better. I'm always open to improvement. Check out my other furniture flips here and my home renovations here, and I will see you next time.